Hey folks, Pastor Josh here. We're going to continue our study in the book of James chapter 1. So if you have a Bible handy, go ahead and turn to James chapter 1. We're going to be looking at verse 18 today and following down. Verse 18 is the end of a paragraph or a section of thought. In ministry school, we call that a pericope. That's actually the name for it in those kind of circles, but we're not going to use that word here. It's a thought. It's the ending of a thought and going on to a new one. But basically what it says, and we're going to go there and turn there with me, if you will, if you have your Bible handy. I'm going to do the NIV, or not NIV. I have an NIV Bible and I have another Bible for reference, but we are going to be using the modern English version today. And what it says is, of his own will he brought us forth with the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Creation, creatures, first fruit of his creatures. Okay, so brought us forth with the word of truth. What got us saved? What brought you to the point of understanding and following Jesus Christ? What brought you forth to that? I want to submit to you that it was somebody telling you the truth, somebody telling you the word of God, somebody being a testimony of God to you. So you have the word of truth brought you forth into a relationship with Jesus Christ. So therefore, that is what that is saying. So I wanted to cover that verse. Very simple, very simple. That's what that's saying. We were be the firstborn of first fruits of his creatures. So we were to be the first fruits brought forth by the word of truth, which someone had brought to you, care enough about you to say, Jesus loves you and you need to accept him in your life. So that's the word of truth. He said he had brought us forth with the word of truth. Word of truth. That's how we came to know Jesus. That's how we entered into the relationship with Jesus. Somebody brought us the word of truth, and we began to work in that, began to do things with that. So understand that that's what that's all about. Now, verse 19, and this is the beginning of another thought, another paragraph of thought called hearing and doing the word. Hearing and doing the word. Now we know that if we are hearers and not doers, it says later on in this particular verse, in these verses, that we sin. If we know not to do, if we know what to do and we do it not, to us it is sin. So that's what James says here later on in the book. To him that knows what to do and doeth it not, that's King James, to him it is sin. So it's the sin of omission. Okay. Verse 19. Therefore, my beloved brothers, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not work the righteousness of God. Therefore lay aside all filthiness and remaining wickedness, and receive with meekness the engraved word, and engrafted word, which is able to save your souls. Okay. Let's dissect this first verse, verse 19. Let's dissect that. Okay? Because temperaments tend to flare. Therefore, my beloved brothers, let every man or every person be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Okay? Swift to hear. If you want to hear something, you got to listen, right? Behind me, it's very quiet in here now. Everyone is gone. The kids are gone to school, and my wife has gone to Bible study. Okay, so it's very quiet in here. So if I want to hear something, I've got to listen. Okay, so if you want to hear, you've got to listen. Behind me, I've got a fish tank right over my shoulder here, and it's got a bubbler in it, and it's bubbling. It's very quiet, but I can hear that bubbler because it's so quiet. But to hear it, I've got to listen. So you got to be quick to listen. First thing we should do, listen. Slow to speak. We tend to, when we have arguments, whether it be with spouses or with friends or whatever, arguments just in general, we tend to defend ourselves. We tend to go on the defensive when we are met with aggression, or if we're met with opposition to a certain view or a certain attitude. Okay, we are met with opposition. So in that situation, especially as a Christian, and this is what James is writing to the Christian brothers, where he's quick to listen. Keep your mouth shut. Listen. Slow to speak. In other words, if you have, and what I've always likened this to, and in my studies, I understood this to be the case. If you are in an altercation or an argument or something like that, where you meet opposition because of a difference of opinion or a difference of point of view or something like that, if you find yourself in that situation, be quick to listen. In other words, sit there or stand there or whatever and just take it in for a moment. Slow to speak. You know, somebody says something about you to your face, it's hard not to be jumping back at them. Be slow to speak. Quick to listen, because usually when somebody does something like that, or there's an argument or a difference of opinion, there's a reason for that. So you've got to kind of listen between the lines a little bit and find out where they're coming from, so that you can have some sort of a, when you do feel the Lord saying, okay, now you can speak, you have some sort of understanding of where they're coming from and where they are, and where they are, why they're saying what they're saying. Okay, where they're getting their information, why they're saying what they're saying. So understand to be quick to listen, slow to speak. And I've learned this. I've learned this in my years as a Christian. I've learned to do this. It's difficult at times to do it, but it's very difficult at times to do it. And I failed at it. I want to say that I've failed at it more times than I haven't. Being quick to listen and slow to speak. I've failed at it more than times than I haven't, because I'm human. I'm a human being. But understand that we are to be quick to listen, to understand why the person is saying what they're saying, where it's coming from, and then slow to speak. When God says go ahead and speak, or go ahead and then you go ahead and you do it. So quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Slow to anger. Why would we? Because it's like a fuse. Okay, somebody says to you that they think you're stupid or something like that. Okay, or that they call your character into question with certain things. So that's what really gets me, is when someone calls my character into question. Okay, that really gets my goat. But if somebody does that, and that's usually where I fail. That's usually where I fail, is when someone calls my character into question. But in the same thing, in that very, very moment of someone getting me to the place, or getting you to the place, and you know what gets you. You know what gets you. You're someone calling your character into question, or something like that. You know what gets you. So in that very moment of when it is something that you know is going to get you, and really, irritate you, be quick to listen. Where they're getting their information, where are they doing, why are they saying this? Where are they getting the information? Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Because if you listen and you understand where and why somebody is saying and getting what they're getting and saying what they're saying, if you understand why, and if you understand where it's coming from, and you talk about it once you're calm about it, your anger then is not fueled by the argument, but it is, you do have an anger. It's okay to be angry, but you're not you're not escalating the situation. Okay. It's okay to be angry, but don't have misplaced anger. Okay. Um, Angry at this person who said this, and for some reason they're getting it from either someone else or another source. So deal with that other source. Make it right with that person, but then go deal with that other source. Okay. Whether it be, maybe this is on Facebook and YouTube, so maybe it's a YouTube comment, maybe it's a Facebook comment, maybe it's someone who, for me specifically, I'm talking about. Maybe it's someone who knows me personally. Maybe it's someone, you know what I mean? Really, you deal with the immediate. Being slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger, and then you get a proper perspective of where you have to deal with the issue. Okay. It says, for the anger of man does not work the righteousness of God. The anger of man does not work the righteousness of God. Okay? Jesus was a person who needed to be angry. He needed to be angry. And he was. He turned over the money changers and all that stuff. That was righteous anger. There's a difference between righteous anger and anger of man. Anger of man is driven by emotions, feelings, fear, all of these things. The righteous anger is fueled by the desire to do what God is calling you to do, or what God has called his. Jesus was angered righteously because his Father's house, which was supposed to be a house of prayer, was being used as a marketplace. So the righteous anger there was because they were abusing God's word. They were abusing God's law. They were abusing the very temple of God. But when it comes to something like character into question or something like that, with us, that's man's anger. That's anger of man, because it hurts our feelings. It hurts our feelings. It makes us angry. It sets fear and doubt in our heart, and that's all emotional things, and that's what we are driven by when we allow the anger of man, without being quick to listen and slow to speak. That immediately is driven by that anger, and that does not at all show the righteousness of God. It says, therefore lay aside all filthiness and retaining and remaining wickedness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls. So put away all of these things, all of those things, the quickly yelling back, the not hearing what's going on, the quickly yelling back, the anger. That, usually when people get angry, they curse words fly and all this stuff. Listen, all of that happens. It doesn't show the righteousness of God at all. It shows that we are reverting back to who we used to be before Jesus came into our life and set us free. Okay, so we are reverting back to who we used to be. He says, put aside all that stuff. Really put aside your old self. In that situation, you have to beat down your old self. It has to die to you daily, because you're going to do that kind of stuff. You're going to do that. It's going to want to rear up, and you're going to want to just go off on somebody without listening, without hearing God's voice. You're going to want to do that, but you got to beat it down. You really got to, beat down that old self and rise up in Jesus even in those moments, and be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger, in order to show the righteousness of God. So that's my challenge for you today. Show the righteousness of God by being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. So until next time, it's Pastor Josh. God bless.